Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this special midweek ag weather outlook brought to you by AgCarolina Farm Credit. Well, what we have to talk about in this video is what you see in the bottom right-hand side of this animation. That's Florence. And Florence has been a powerful hurricane, at times getting up to Category 4 in strength, and it is an exceptionally large hurricane. We can see here that it's got an abundant amount of moisture into it, and therefore we're going to have to pay very close attention to what this does in terms of the flooding threat once this gets into North and South Carolina. So we're going to focus most of our attention in this video on the potential threats here and the path of Florence. So let's get right into it. Now, I've been doing weather forecasting for a long time, and I don't remember a time where I saw 5 separate areas that we're going to have to be watching across the open Atlantic Ocean. Florence, of course, being the big one, going to hit North Carolina and then dip south into South Carolina. But we're also watching a tropical disturbance in the Gulf of Mexico going toward Texas and Louisiana over the coming days, and then Isaac following all of it as it gets into the Caribbean. So we have multiple systems here that could potentially cause quite a bit of trouble for the East Coast and the Gulf Coast of the United States. Now, it was really neat to see on Wednesday the use of contraflow. That's where they let all major roadways and their all major lanes be outbound. You got a police escort there from the South Carolina State Police. Just a great video here showing you how we're able to really use our infrastructure to save lives and get people out of the way of these incredibly nasty storms that interact with our East Coast. But what I want to discuss is more about the meteorology here. So take a look over here at the image on the left. Florence is projected to maintain strength as a major hurricane. That's Category 3 or stronger as it eventually makes landfall, probably late in the night on Thursday. We'll certainly be seeing the rain bands hitting at that point, but then maybe a landfall where the eye wall touches land some point in the day on Friday as, again, a powerful hurricane. But you can see the National Hurricane Center has this one dipping to the south, and we've got to talk about why that's going to be the case. So the European model, that's the ensemble forecast from the European model over there on the left, and you can see the same thing. So dipping to the south, stalling out, and that's a recipe for disaster, and then eventually turning north going into the Appalachian Mountains. Now, why is this the case? Well, if we look at what the flow pattern is on Saturday, this will be after it's made its southward turn. I want to tell you why. There's a big ridge stretching from Alaska clear to the Hudson Bay, and this ridge has a couple of components to it we need to pay attention to. First, there's an area of clockwise flow in the atmosphere right here around this center of upper level high pressure. I'm kind of drawing an H there for you. See, all high pressure systems, see another one sitting over here off the coast, all high pressure systems have clockwise flow around them. And so here's what's interesting. This high pressure system is what's helping guide Florence toward North Carolina, but it has been weakening with time, whereas this high that's sitting over the Illinois-Wisconsin border has been strengthening. So once Florence makes landfall, and it's going to slow down before it does that, it'll be the circulation around this high pressure system that shoves it to the south. And that's why it's going to hit South Carolina just as hard. So that's the setup. This is what we call the synoptic meteorology dominating the flow of Florence. The good thing about it is this. Overnight, Wednesday night into early Thursday morning, Florence was basically taking in quite a bit of dry air in a high wind shear environment into its south side. Now, that's weakening Florence overall, but still, Florence is a massive hurricane. And even though we're bringing in some dry air and some wind shear kind of hurting the south side, it is still on a path toward North Carolina before it turns south like this. And it's still going to be a major, major disaster with a lot of flooding potential. So let's talk about that flooding potential. We can look at it 2 ways here. Over there on the left, I have a forecast over the next 7 days from the European model, giving you the whole U.S. perspective. And on the right, I've got zoomed in view here of the Carolinas. And what you see here is that coastal Carolina, really south of Cape Hatteras, we're talking anywhere between 3 and probably in the mid to upper 20s in terms of inches, maybe over 30 inches of rainfall for some coastal locations. And that extends into South Carolina as well. Now, the big question is as the system comes in and slows down as it makes that southward turn, it eventually gets absorbed into the upper level flow and taken back here into the Appalachian Mountains. And right now, when I look at this, I kind of think that they've underdone the total precipitation in the Appalachian Mountains, because I think the enhanced lift from the mountains could produce locally another 10 inches to more of rain in some pockets. So this is a big, big problem, and this is going to be hitting the peanut crop, the cotton crop, the sweet potato crop, all of it. And it's going to hit corn and soybeans as well. And so we're going to have to pay careful attention to what the eventual flooding threat looks like once this gets here. So these are the major things that I'm very, very concerned about moving forward in this forecast. To show you another thing here, this is what we're looking at over here on the kind of the coastal waterways here in terms of storm surge potential. We are seeing possibly up to 9 feet of storm surge, maybe even higher than that, getting into some of those coastal waterways. So be paying close attention to what the National Hurricane Center is seeing here in terms of storm surge. Now, just to add one more thing to this, we are going to be pushing another system into parts of Texas. Now, I talk about this because the Carolinas do have several crops that are in competition with what's grown in Texas, like peanuts and like cotton and stuff like that. So when we take a look at this over the next several days, look at the total accumulated precipitation coming into Texas here. That is a lot. And that's on top of what we saw in the last 3 days, where coastal Texas, getting all the way up into Dallas-Fort Worth area, saw anywhere between 1 to 2, maybe up over 6 inches of rainfall. So we've got a lot going on here in the tropics. Oh, and we're not done yet. We also have to talk about Isaac. You see, Isaac, even though it's a weak tropical storm, is going to go across the Lesser Antilles. Once it gets into the open Caribbean, the big question will be, does Isaac eventually get somewhere here into the Gulf of Mexico? Because remember, if a system gets into the Gulf of Mexico and taps into those warm waters, well, it may stretch itself up here along the East Coast. It may come into Louisiana, Mississippi. It may go into Texas. And we have to watch this one carefully. It's still 10, 12 days away from being a potential player, but we just can't turn a blind eye to what's going on in the tropics right now because it is extremely, extremely active. So when we look at it all, kind of putting this all together, leading up to the heavy rainfall we're about to get, this was the last 3 days of precipitation. Some locations there in North Carolina saw over 2.5 to 3 inches of rainfall. Same thing with parts of South Carolina, and that's before Florence gets there. Put it all together again, this is what you see. We're looking at a widespread region of at least 3 to 5 inches, with locally some places along the coast getting over 1 foot to 2 feet of rainfall. And that's going to be the major threat. Yes, it's going to be windy. That's no doubt. That's what all hurricanes are. But it's always the flood threat. That's the most damaging aspect of any hurricane. You've been hit in this region by Matthew. You were hit in this region by the northern edge of the moisture flowing off of Joaquin. Both of those events were 1,000-year flood events. In other words, the probability of them happening is 1 in 1,000. You've now got another one coming. So that's back to back to back years of major flooding events. And here's the next one. Please be careful. Please make sure you've taken the proper precautions. And we'll give you another assessment after the weekend to see what Florence is doing at that point. At that point, jutting to the south before turning back north and going toward the Appalachian Mountains is the current forecast. Please be careful. Keep an eye on all of this. Keep a close eye on the National Hurricane Center. That's nhc.noaa.gov. And if you've been asked to evacuate, get out now. Please leave. And with that, I'll wrap up this forecast video. We at AgCarolina thank you for watching. Hope you look forward to our next update coming out after the weekend. Thank you.